Today I'm speaking with Hamraoui Tesfa. She's director of the Ethiopian-American Family Resource Center here in the DMV area, and she served more than a decade in social work and community engagement. Currently, she's getting her doctorates at Howard University, and her dissertation is on identity formation of Ethiopian-Americans. Hamraoui, thank you so much for making the time. This is just such a fascinating topic, and at first I'm just curious why you chose this topic.
That's a good question, Hermela. Thank you for inviting me again. Why I chose this topic is because in the past years I have worked with the youth and families, and I have seen the challenge that the youth go through, the miscommunication with families, and I felt like there's a big gap that was not addressed.
So communication, I mean, first of all, there's the generation gap between parents and children. There's always some sort of a communication gap, but then you add the layers of immigration and being from a different culture and country. How does that widen the gap in communication, and what kind of challenges does it present, particularly for Ethiopian Americans, but also for any immigrant family?
First of all, families, when they come here, usually they immigrate to the U.S. because they have some type of challenge, or they may be looking forward to improve their life. So when they come here, most immigrant families, they have problem settling in a new country. There's a challenge of the acculturation in a new society. And then to add to that, maybe they bring their children, very young children, or they have their children here, and they are raising their children in a completely different culture. And parents usually don't know about the type of culture that they're raising their children in. There is this age gap, there's this cultural gap, there is the challenge that parents go through trying to acculturate to a new culture, and the kids are growing up in a different culture. And also parents have to work long hours to support their kids, usually having minimum wage jobs. So the kids are learning how to navigate about this culture on their own. And because of the reason that I have mentioned above, parents may go through stress of their own, challenge of settling in a new culture, issues of back home, whatever it is, they may go through a lot of challenges such as divorce, mental issue, their own challenge. Because settling in a new country by itself is a very, challenging thing. And kids, like I said, are growing up in a completely different culture. So the gap widens because of this so many different factors.
Something that seems particularly an issue or a kind of a feature of immigrant families or immigrant parents is they don't talk about what they've been through in their home countries or some of their trauma that they've gone through. A lot of them are here because they've escaped wars or escaped some sort of, lack of economic access. And yet what seems, generally true, although this is a generalization, is that a lot of parents don't communicate to their kids, even once they've become adults, what they've been through. And I would think that that is part of what makes it difficult to connect, right?
Definitely, because what happens is parents, as you've said, can be seen as positive sometimes because there's this tenacity factor that I can do it, I can make it in a new culture. But then at the same time, parents are not vulnerable enough to seek help with the type of challenge that they face, and also to talk to their children. As a person goes through different challenges, it's okay to go through things, it's okay to experience things. We don't usually talk about this type of things in the culture. So kids feel like there is this big miscommunication with parents because they feel like they don't feel like the parents are experiencing this type of vulnerable feelings. And kids in the meantime may go through different things such as depression, such as bullying, such as different type of things. But they feel as though they can't communicate this with their parents because, as you have said, Hermela, there is not this culture of talking about challenges openly, talking about vulnerabilities openly. So the kids feel like, I can't talk to my parents. It's just like talking to a wall. So they feel alone in their struggle. So this widens the gap, and the families as well. Because like I said, we don't talk about our vulnerabilities, about our challenges openly. We don't seek help in our culture. We have our social life, but we don't usually mostly openly talk about our challenges. So this might create tension in marriage. This might create depression, mental health issue, feeling of helplessness in the part of the parent. So, this will complicate the problem further.
And learning about some of what is the younger people said to you, I think it was 18 to 25 that you interviewed. I came here when I was 7. Some of those challenges resonate with me, but I would assume that things in some ways have gotten better because it's a more global world. There's more what appears to be cultural sensitivity, but I'm surprised to find that a lot of the young people that you've talked to, these things are actually worse now in their experience.
Yeah, I was surprised as well, Hermila, because I knew about the different challenges that kids go through, but then as I was interviewing these young people, what I found out is that there are a lot of complicated issues that we have not seen, that we have not addressed, and parents don't have any idea about the type of struggles that kids go through in school, in their own identity formation, and with their relation with their parents. There are different challenges that kids go through, but the older generation is not aware for the most part.
And what are they going through in school? What are some of the things that the people you interviewed told you?
One of the biggest themes was bullying, especially kids who go through to schools that are not diverse. Like, for example, I talked to quite a few kids, young people who went to mostly Caucasian schools. Most of them expressed that they felt unwelcome, they felt like they did not fit in there, they felt alone, the odd one out in there. So bullying is one of the things. Another thing is miscommunication with family, feeling like parents don't understand me. One of the biggest issues that I have continuously heard is that they were expressing that their parents are mostly concentrated on the kids achieving in school, on becoming a good student, but that's what the young people were saying. They were not checking on my emotional health, how I was adjusting, about the challenge that I was facing. Parents usually minimized those, according to the young people, or subscribed a solution that the young people did not feel as though it will give. For example, I interviewed kids, young people that were going through depression, issues like that, and parents, they told me that their parents minimized the situation, saying, oh, it will get better, or you should pray about it and everything, which these things can be helpful, but the young people did not feel as though it was not addressed in a way that should be addressed.
We see all these numbers about, anxiety going up, depression going up in young people, teenagers, even kids. I imagine that is also the case in, Ethiopian-American communities. I mean, the numbers or minority communities in general is really spiked. So what are you seeing in terms of mental health?
So I'll give you an example. One time in my own family, there was this family member that was struggling with mental health. So we decided as a family, let's go and talk to a social worker that specialized in mental health and talk to her about what we need to address. So we went to this Ethiopian lady, and as a family we said, we need guidance on how to deal with this. When she saw us, this woman, she already felt burnout. The first thing she said when she saw us, because she worked with a lot of Ethiopian families, so the first thing she said is, she told us how frustrated she is that lots of families, when somebody in their family go through mental health issue, usually what they're concerned about is the fact that other people don't know about it. They're concerned about how that would make me look in the community, instead of dealing with the situation and finding a solution to the situation. They're more concentrating on keeping an image because there's a big taboo. So this woman went on to tell us how she's frustrated. Thankfully, we were not in that place. We went there to find a solution for this individual, and she gave us good information. But that was a big lesson for me because as people, as parents, as family, when somebody struggles through that mental health issue, rather than helping the individual, parents usually are concerned about what would people in my church, in the mosque, what would they say? You know, because there's this big taboo. So what happens is it leaves these children in a very lonely place. And I'm not saying all families are like that, but parents, and mostly we have not learned how to address this situation in a way that brings solution for it. So there is this big issue with that. And also another issue is that we don't have enough professionals that speak our language, that are in tune with our culture, that can help these families. Because we come from a different culture. And that's one consistent theme that I get. Parents come, they want to help their kids, or other family members come, but we don't know where to send them. There's very few places where there's Amharic speaking individuals that can help. So that is another complication.
So, you know, the issue of other people, you know, finding out, is that getting any better? Or what would you say to parents that are more worried about that than they are about their kids' well-being? And how bad does it get for families for them to actually go seek therapy? Because I think it is a sign of that they're progressive to some degree, that they're even trying that.
Yes, so what I say to parents is that, and I do understand from their point, because this is an addressed issue in our community, we have not talked about it, it's a big taboo in our community, but what I want to encourage parents is to let them know this issue can knock anybody's home, and it's like any other health, mental health, and if it's addressed properly, the person can have a very productive life. But the solution only comes when we talk about it openly. And I know that as a society, we don't do justice to families who go through that. We don't talk about it openly. We don't support them. So it can feel lonely, but it would be good to find others who go through the same thing as us. It's always good to find professional help. It might make the family feel like I'm lost, I don't know how to handle it, but it's always better to talk to somebody who's a professional who has knowledge in this issue. It can really help our children to come out better.
So I want to get a little bit more into the type of mental health challenges that young people are going through, but first I want to take a break. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. We're back with Hamraoui Tesfa talking about the topic of identity formation of Ethiopian-Americans, something that you're doing your dissertation on. So I want to get a little bit into the type of mental health challenges that young people, particularly Ethiopian-Americans or immigrants that have, the children of immigrants, are facing. And a lot of parents, you know, will say, I've been through war, I've been through this and that, you have it so much better than me here in America. What could you possibly be going through that needs this level of attention? And I know that young people, those even younger than me, are going through a new set of challenges. Some of these challenges I do not relate to, and we don't even have that much of a gap. So the young people you're talking to, what are they going through that is, you know, affecting their day-to-day life to the point that they need to go seek help?
That's a very good question. It's a different challenge. It's a completely different challenge. That's why it's sometimes hard for parents to understand and to relate, because this is one of actually the topic that most young people discuss, because their parents say to them exactly like this. They say to them, oh, you know, you have it much better. You can now go to school. You have nice food on the plate. You know, you have everything coming. And so just why don't you just concentrate? But where parents miss the point is the kids have completely different challenge. Somebody was telling me actually about a study that was done, I forgot who was studied by, and the study said the type of stress that young people have at this age, if it was in the 1950s, somebody would be in a mental ward. That's what the study was saying, and the type of challenge that they did. And I mean, we don't have to go far. We're seeing the results, right? We know the fruits. So many kids are going through depression. We hear more. So many kids are committing suicide. So many things, you know. So this did not just come from anywhere. You know, somebody just doesn't commit suicide out of nowhere. For example, and I'm not saying there are no people who commit suicide in Ethiopia, but especially in the older times, you didn't hear much about this problem. like especially in the older generation, you didn't hear much about people committing suicide. They had it hard. They did not have enough, probably, like any of the material things that these kids have at this time. But then there were other things. There was community support. There was this love of family. There was this protection. There was this, community type of living. They were not exposed to so many different challenges. Now it seems like it's mostly mental challenges that these kids go through. See, that's where we get it confused. We see good thing as a material, but somebody can have all the material that they want, but then go through a lot of mental health challenge. Mostly, this is media time, social media. The kids are exposed to so much messages. They hear so many messages on who they are, what they need to be, what success is, how it's just so much messages. And then there is not the support, this community support that the parents had. So they're bombarded with so many messages that makes them so confused. And there's a lot of competition with peers. So there's so many things that the kids go through, and this causes them to lose who they are. And then they're growing up in a culture completely different than the parents. Parents don't understand the challenges that the kids go through. So this leaves the kids in a state where they're very vulnerable. And parents usually don't understand this. So the kids have completely different challenges, some much bigger sometimes than what the parents experienced back home. So that's what parents should understand.
So you mentioned competition, and I'm curious how, because I see this among young people, particularly in elite schools that end up going to Ivy League schools. The competition is very intense. I mean, I just don't quite remember it feeling that way growing up. And so how big is that right now in terms of the pressure that young people feel? And how does social media maybe play a role in that too?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think since we live in a capitalist society, a materialistic type of belief, that never ends. So always, because business people, they want to sell their stuff. So since the time our kids are young, they convince them that their value is attached with how much they have. But the problem with this is it never ends. I was listening to an interview, I think it was Kim Kardashian the other day. And she was talking about how she was set to get millions, but now she's not satisfied. She wants to get hundreds of millions. And it's like she was saying that she feels unsatisfied because she has a new set of record. This is the problem. It never ends. It's like more, you get more, but it never ends. And society bombards our kids with messages from the time when they're young. Their value is attached to these material things, to new iPhone. It can be a game, it can be a clothes, it can be, and they attach their identity with this. So they're always striving and wanting to have an identity, wanting to have a significance. It is a good thing. It's a natural desire of any human beings. The problem becomes when you attach that to an attainable goal, because there's always somebody that has better than you. There's always somebody who has a better car. There's always somebody who has a better iPhone. So our kids are struggling to attain a dream that they will never reach. And like you said, there's this media, social media, that always glamorizes things. And what we show on social media is not our real life. People who are popular on social media always show the glamorous side of their life. They don't talk about their struggles. They don't talk about. So there is this wrong notion of what success is and how glamorous other people's life is. So they are running toward a race they never finish.
Interesting. I want to talk about the formation of identity in terms of race, because a lot of kids that grow up here, they're Ethiopian, they're American, maybe they're Eritrean, mixed with other nationalities as well, but they're Immigrant-Americans, and then they're also Black. So what role or what do you see in terms of how young people are navigating those multiple identities?
Yes, because yeah, like you said, our children's identity is not just one set. On one side, there's this Black identity, there's Ethiopian identity. Usually, parents see the one side of identity, which is Ethiopian identity. They tell their kids, you know, you're Ethiopian, you're Eritrean, which is not a bad thing. But then there's another identity. There are also Black kids growing up here in the society. For example, our children, they're Black boys growing up in the society. So they are trying to find themselves. That's one thing that I have heard as I was interviewing them. On one hand, there's my Ethiopian side, which I'm happy about, but then there's another side of me. I'm a Black person growing up in the society. How do I navigate that? How do I find myself through this? How can I embrace the different side of me and feel whole? Because that each side is telling them that they are one part, but these kids are different part. They're also Americans. They're not just Ethiopians. So how do I embrace all these parts of me and feel whole? So that's one of the questions that the generation seem to have.
And is there any way, tools that they're finding to be able to do that? Is that a conversation that they're able to have with their parents or with each other?
It's from the conversation that I've had with these young people, it seems to emerge eventually, especially as they go to college. A lot of the young people that I interviewed told me that the movements, the Black Lives movement, the police brutality movement, was a wake-up call for them from their comfort zone, helping them to see that they're not just Ethiopians here, but they're Black, growing up in the U.S. So it comes as they grow up, they're able to embrace those, but what they have told me, it would help from the community. What they told me was a very positive side about our culture is the social life, the fact that we raise our children together, that close-knit culture was very helpful to the kids, but they were expressing that they wished their family, their community knew there's another side to them as well, and embracing, helping them to embrace their different identity, racial identity, them being also Ethiopian-Americans, not just Ethiopians, that would help.
You know, I want to leave off with just kind of a takeaway for both parents and children that are now having to navigate, or young adults, children that are now having to navigate this conversation. But first, we're going to take a really quick break. All right, welcome back. I'm back with Hamraoui Tesfa. Hamraoui, this is a fascinating conversation. I think one that a lot of young adults and parents could take a lot from. So let's talk about what they can take away, because these are difficult conversations to have. I mean, I've seen, parents and children try to talk to each other, and I've had my experiences growing up. And one of the things I see with parents, with the most well-meaning parents, is they feel defensive. How is it that I've done all of this and you still don't have what you need, or you're still feeling a lack? So, from a point of sensitivity with parents, what would you say to them when they approach these conversations? Because I've seen it with parents that have young kids, parents that have teenagers or adults. When you start to tell them, or they start to tell them what they feel about their identity and what they're lacking, they take it as their failure. So let's start with a message to parents. What would you say to them?
That's a good question. For parents, I want to say, this is not an easy journey. Raising children in a different culture, parenting as it is, has its own a lot of challenges. It's not easy. Parents should not be very hard on themselves. It's not easy. They're raising their children in a completely different culture. Nobody had showed them how to do it. And also, they are navigating through so much challenge. It's not like parents had it best here, raising they were trying maybe working 2 jobs, struggling a lot and trying to provide for their families. So they had it very hard. So we're not blaming parents at all. They were put in a situation that was very hard on them. Most parents have paid such a heavy price for their kids. So it's not their fault. But then still that does not stop it from a problem becoming a problem, because if just raising a child is very hard by itself, and raising them in a completely different culture, in a completely different time, has its own challenge. So parents, I encourage them not to be hard on themselves, but to see how difficult it can be for the kids as well, because the kids have their own different challenges, and it's never too late. Even if they have adult children, it's never too late. They can always talk about, it's acknowledging the challenge of the kids, the pain of the kids can bring a big healing to the relationship. So that's what I want to say to parents.
And then what would you say to young people that are dealing with their own issues, but probably also have a blind spot about their parents' experience and just perspective?
Yes. For the young people, I want to say, yes, it may feel as though your parents don't understand your side. Your parents don't understand the challenge that you go through. And it's very understandable that you would feel this way, because you have your own different challenges, difficulties that you go through in the society. And it's very understandable not to feel understood and not to feel heard. Really understandable. And I just want to say, and I'm not giving any excuse, but just parents don't know better, because they have different challenges trying to settle to a completely different culture. They have so many things thrown at them. So they're trying to navigate through that. And also they don't know the type of challenge you go through, because they come from a completely different culture. So through this, you might have felt as though you are alone, that you are not heard, that you're not understood, and which you have a right to feel like that. I just want to say the parents were going through so many different challenges through their own, and not knowing about the challenge that the young people go through, have widened the gap. So I just want to ask the young people also to see that there's a different challenge that parents go through. That does not excuse what they have gone through, but there is also a different challenge that the parents go through as well.
I'm almost feeling the stress of what parents and children are probably feeling, just like listening to these conversations and how they might bring them up. So who's responsible for starting the conversation?
Community. I think as a community we have to talk about it. Parents who've raised their children, and there are parents, a lot of parents who've raised their children here, and those who have gone through challenges, and those who have gone through success. They're trying to have the community, which I appreciate as well. As institutions, especially religious institutions, they have to pay attention. They have to pay attention, because mostly we concentrate on the older generation. They have to pay attention. They have to find ways in which to fill these gaps, because we don't have social work institutions. We don't have that modern institution that the Westerns have. Our institutions are our religious institutions. And so these religious institutions have to start this conversation about mental health, about depression, about addiction, about communication with parents, which there are, but enough is not being done. So the community has to take that part, because parents are going through their own struggles, young people are going through their own struggles. We have to stop just attending to our own individual needs and embrace these families and giving them the holistic need that they need. That's where I think.
Are these conversations happening at the Ethiopian-American Family Resource Center, where you're a director? How does that play out there?
Yes, we have a weekly parenting session, which just yesterday we had, which we give awareness. We have discussion with parents. We have a weekly sessions in which we do that. We have a group, over 1,000 group women. We bring guests. We talk about different issues. With these families, we talk about different challenges that they go through with their families. Like I said, we bring different guests, and also we have a resource center, which we give different resources, because the parents, they don't only have issues not only with their children, but the lack of resources, one of the big contributors. So we give educational resource, job resource, language resource to families. So we're trying to reach with families through holistic method, and also partner with others who are doing the same thing as us, so that we can hold hands, because it's not something that just one organization can do.
And this is right up your alley because you've actually written a book, Raising Ethiopian Children in the West, and we'll put the link down in our description section. So this appears to be your passion. I mean, are you seeing any sort of progress over the years in this relationship between Ethiopians who are here raising children in the West?
The progress that I've seen is there's more conversation, more people talking about this, more people educating about this, more people talking about the different challenges. That's a progress that I see. And parents, a lot of parents I see, they're interested. For example, the one I told you about, the weekly session we have, parents come and they attend. I want to encourage parents to attend this type of sessions and they educate themselves. So I really want to applaud parents with this. Parents are really opening up to this. The challenge that I see here, Mela, is the type of challenge that the kids go through is becoming more complicated, especially with social media, especially with media, with exposure. It's just going so fast, so many different type of challenges. So even though parents are becoming more aware, the type of complications that these kids are exposed to is widening. So we need to, as a society, we need to hold hands, we need to address the issue, we need to talk about it, we need to embrace the children, these families, because we can't just leave them by themselves. Parents have too many challenges, young people have too many challenges, so this has to be a community effort. That's what I've seen.
Great. I think we've covered a lot of bases. Anything else I didn't ask you?
I want to thank you for giving me this platform to talk about this very important issue, Hermela. And I hope you will address these issues a lot in the future as well. And I just want to say to families, you're not alone. I know that you have so many struggles going through. Parents, I know that there's so much struggle. This is not pointing hands on you. Please don't feel alone. Talk to somebody. Don't hold it inside of you. When there's a marriage problem, when there's issue with your children, I know we don't talk about this openly. Don't feel alone. Always make sure you talk to somebody you trust. Don't hold it inside. It's always good to talk to somebody. And I would encourage them to expose themselves to different resources. And for young people, I want to say, you're not alone with your struggle. Also, talk to somebody. Don't hold it inside. When you go through something, make sure you talk to somebody. Find help, because there's always somebody that can help you. I know you might feel alone, but when you talk to somebody, there's always a solution. That's what I want to say.
Great. Thank you so much. Hamrawi Tesfa, Director of the Ethiopian-American Family Resource Center. Thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you, Hermela. Thank you.